Good morning, Chaldea, and welcome back to our first in what will eventually be a series of a retrospective of the Fate franchise.
Mega series.
I'm Cole.
I'm Jimmy.
I'm Jake. Oh, whatever.
Someone. Or someone.
The other one. You're the other one.
The one who does all the work.
I post on Twitter
occasionally.
occasionally.
You do. And you respond to a comment on the thing? Yeah, I'm proud of you.
I do work occasionally.
You sure do.
But yeah, we are going to be beginning a series today where we will go through all the Fates, I imagine, in chronological order as opposed to release order.
I guess so, since we're starting with this show.
Yeah.
As close to chronological. I mean, obviously, there's no strict timeline.
There's some wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
But yes, today we are going to be talking about my, by far, favorite series in the Fate franchise, Fate Zero. And I think it's the same for you two?
Yeah. Like, this is still my favorite, and it's probably still my favorite serial anime. It's really freaking well made. It has beautiful fight scenes. We'll get into more of this later, but like, dude, it's just like kind of like everything I wanted in a show. And to be fair, there's a bit of nostalgia because it was like maybe my 6th anime or something like that. So I watched it pretty early on, but it does beat out some of those other nostalgia bombs like Brotherhood, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Kogia, stuff like that. So
yeah, it's real good. Personally, I actually still like Unlimited Blade Works a little bit better. But I'll get into the reasoning of that once we actually get to that series.
Yeah.
It's amazing considering how angry you were when we were watching.
I was definitely angry at various points of it, but I have come around. And just a quick note, we're probably not going to be doing this series every week sequentially. It'll be an overtime thing, as we have some Fate Go stuff to talk about. We'll talk about that. We'll throw in an episode of this every now and then. Mm-hmm. And this is fair warning right now. This is going to contain spoilers for Fate Zero. Mm-hmm. So,
although this is kind of getting into Star Wars territory of this is like a 10-year-old show now. Go watch Fate Zero.
Yeah. I'm sure there are people who will listen to this who are mostly just fans of the game and haven't done much of the rest of the series. Mm-hmm. And to you, I would say, please watch the shows in the series because they're really the best part of the series. Fate Go is a genuinely good mobile game for the most part, and if you like gacha games, it's a pretty freaking fun one. But the shows are such great storytelling, vehicles.
Like, if you think the Solomon story in FGO was good, just watch any of the anime or play the visual novel Unlike Us.
Well, that's a weird point, because I think we should talk about that at some point, like, maybe once we get through more of these. I would kind of like to put, like, a bit of a tier list of stories, and I would probably put Solomon above some of the lesser Fate anime.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Last Encore.
Yeah, but we'll get to Last Encore when we get to Last Encore. Anyway.
Calderns, what about the visual novels?
Oh, no! Well, yeah, the visual novels are, I don't know, I haven't played them, so.
We're bad Fate fans. So,
Jake's played all of the Just Heaven's Feel, but still.
Yeah, I played part of the Fate route. I got bored because I'd seen the original Studio Dean anime, so I just played Heaven's Feel because those movies weren't out yet.
Yeah. So, let's talk about Fate Zero.
Yes.
It is, spoilers from here on out, it is a story full of tragedy and heartbreak, and it is just wonderful.
Really loves to just kick you.
It really does.
It's real dark.
It's like one of the darkest anime I've ever watched. That generally doesn't feel like.
It's dark, but it's not like comically dark like something like
Right.
Elfen Lied is, which is just like bad.
And
I don't know about that.
Elfen Lied is bad.
I would say, if you've seen the second Heaven's Feel movie, so you kind of have a feel for that storyline, I would say Heaven's Feel might be a little bit darker than Zero in overall tone, but it's dark in a different way. Like, Heaven's Feel is seriously messed up. There's a lot of moral stuff.
Heaven's Feel tiptoes into the kind of, like, comically dark territory for me. It hasn't breached it yet. It's still, like, in the just very grim story, but yeah.
But with Zero, it's more of just, like, watching a bunch of people with mostly good intentions just fall apart. Like, a lot of really bad things happen to good people.
Yeah.
And
a bunch of bad people.
And bad people, too.
Which is satisfying.
Bad things also happen to bad people. Not a lot of good things happen in Fate Zero, but it's a really good... It follows a lot of different characters. You get to see a lot of different stories happening with roughly equal importance.
Yeah. That's why I feel like this is by far the best Fate anime to watch first, because it is the most Fate anime. Like I've said before, it has the least, like, sort of bullshit wrapped around it. Like, even the original Heaven's Feel, Blade Works, and Fate routes kind of have a little bit of fuckery going on. This, I don't think there's any, like, twists that don't make sense or that break the rules of the game right off the top.
I guess it does feel pretty classic, yeah, in terms of, like, I mean, it feels like kind of like the quintessential Fate storyline, honestly. It's like...
Which is weird because it did come after the original.
Definitely,
but it breaks its own rules less than the original, I think, is what we're trying to say.
And it might do so partially because of the fact that it didn't try to be 3 different stories all in one. Yeah. It's just one single story. And to be fair, there's a lot of stuff in this story that is actually, like, somewhat spoilerific for, like, Heaven's Feel. But to me, like, that it's a weird opinion, because, like, a lot of people started with a visual novel, you know, read them all in order, the order you're supposed to watch them, which is Fate, Unlimited Blade Works, Heaven's Feel. And Heaven's Feel has a bunch of information about the characters. And like I said, this is going to spoil us. So, like, for instance, Rin and Sakura are sisters. This is not information you get in the first 2 routes of the Fate Stay Night novel. But you
hinted at a little bit.
Sure, but like, you wouldn't guess it, probably. But it's like...
Unless you know
it is just, like, right out of the gate in Zero. It's just there.
Yeah, do they show her getting adopted?
More or less.
Yeah. Karia gets there, like, shortly after the fact, I feel like.
Like, they explicitly say it happens.
Yeah, I do remember, like, him talking with his sister, who is Rin's mother, about the whole process. That's another thing. Everyone's related in this.
Oh, no.
He was his sister.
I think...
What's the relationship?
I think they were sort of together, but then she chose Tokiomi.
Are you sure? I think they were siblings.
Well, there was definitely
there was definitely like a love thing going on with that. Because like he like, I mean, again, spoilers obviously. Near the end of the show, he like rapes her. Doesn't he?
He kills her because she is like. Again,
maybe that's true. The scene kind of would just fade to black, and then you saw her like all fucked up. I kind of assumed
something with bugs happened.
I think he was just like, killing her, choking her out, like bashing her head.
Admittedly, I don't remember that scene super well, so that could be all it is. So
actually, no, she wasn't dead. That's right. She didn't
die. Like, she was horribly crippled.
Yeah.
So anyway. Yeah, lots of bad things. But yeah, no, like, so that's an obviously big spoiler. So there is an argument to be made for playing/watching all of the Stay Night material first, so you don't spoil Heaven's Feel for yourself. But the actual events in Heaven's Feel don't get spoiled by Zero.
Yeah,
just
I feel
the
like
setup for it.
Honestly, it's a very minor spoiler for what I've seen. It's kind of just supposed... Like, I don't know, they haven't done much with it in the... we've only seen the first 2 movies at the time of this recording, and I don't know if it's really that big a deal. I would say go ahead and watch Zero first.
I mean...
Yeah, it feels... Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so, I would... This is something I've said for a while. While, yes, if you're going to play the visual novel, I don't have any problem with you going Stay Night, then Zero, but since... the anime studio Roundtable has adapted the series. They adapted Zero first, and while there are some references, specifically in the last episode where they kind of allude to a bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense. They made that first, and then they made Unlimited Blade Works, and now they're making Heaven's Feel. And generally speaking, it makes sense to watch them in that order because everything makes sense from that perspective.
Yes.
In fact, I think Unlimited Blade Works is
I think
better
it's almost,
having watched
I think it's almost
Zero.
a bigger spoiler to play Stay Night first,
Right.
and then watch Zero, because at that point Kiritsugu, quote air quotes, wins.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is kind of the big thing about Zero, is that when I initially watched it and I knew nothing about the Fate franchise, I literally had no idea who was the main character until about
Exactly.
the
Which is
halfway
really
point.
cool.
yeah, that's one of the best parts about Zero is the fact that it follows all of these different characters. Sort of the I would say maybe the 4 most main characters are Kiritsugu, Kirei, Karya, and Waver.
Yeah.
It's like it follows their stories. They're almost more the POV characters, but
Right.
it really, you don't know how it's going to end. You don't know who's going to sort of win, who's going to die,
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And I feel like watching them in chronological order like this, even Heaven's Feel, which is the most closely connected to Zero, it feels more like a payoff than it does like
agree.
you're spoiled.
Yeah, like watching Heaven's Feel, the moment when they like really get to reconnect as sisters is awesome because we've known this for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't think it would have had the same impact.
I mean,
it would have been probably good. Either way,
I'm
but-
gonna be perfectly honest. I feel I've watched so much fluffy Fate stuff like Carnival Phantasm and the cooking show that that almost kind of lessened it for me.
That's probably true, I guess. But I don't know.
But it was still
I'm
a very
pretty good at
good
filtering
moment.
those out.
It was
so.
still a very good moment.
I mean, all this is kind of a moot point, I guess, now that I think about it, because if you're listening to this, you've probably already seen Zero and maybe everything else because it's spoilers, but whatever. You know, the point is, this is a good place to start in the series, and it's freaking fantastic. It has... Before the other shows by Roundtable came out, it had many of my very favorite fight scenes in any anime. And to this day, some of them are still very, very good.
Yeah, I think the season 1 Cthulhu fight, like at the end of season 1,
Wow, that was crazy.
was probably for the longest point my favorite fight, just because you have it was Saber, Ryder, and someone else fighting this giant Cthulhu thing that Castor summoned, and then up in the sky you have fucking Berserker who took over a fighter jet fighting Gil on his like golden spaceship.
Oh my god.
That was so good.
That was one of the best fight scenes ever. Like the huge payoff of the only maybe like really one of the only really good uses of Excalibur in the whole series. I think they use it again in Unlimited Blade Works, if I'm not mistaken.
She uses it to destroy the Grail monster thing that is created
anyway.
at the temple.
So,
the one that
yeah.
what's
She-
Shinji's stuck
Turns
in.
out she can't use it very often because, Shiro's a freaking awful mage.
Shiro's kind of shit
So-
at this.
When she actually gets to use it, it's really cool, and this is one of those moments. On top of all that, it's a great fight with Cthulhu. The freaking fighter jet berserker fight is just legendary in my. Even though there's not even like that many like frames, like there's like maybe a total of like 30 seconds of the fight. It's really cool.
Like it's fucking two legendary heroes fighting with like magic spaceships essentially. It's fantastic.
It's
using almost modern and futuristic technology to
Right.
Yeah, spaceships.
as but honestly, a lot of the fights, especially by the end, just have a lot more feeling and emotion and weight behind them than in a lot of other series. When
Because you see all the servants kind of build up these rivalries almost.
exactly when you get to the final point where it's like Saber finally takes on Berserker while Archer and Ryder, dude, that scene the final fight between Ryder and Archer is still maybe one of my favorite Fate moments there is. It's like that, and maybe Shira versus Gilgamesh.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
we'll talk about this more in kind of the follow-up episode to this.
Yeah.
But Ryder's philosophy was just probably one of my favorite parts of the show in general.
Yeah.
And just being a very pragmatic character and seeing him
everyone loves Ryder.
facing him off against a very kind of cynical character was very cool to watch, even if the cynical character ultimately won.
Yeah, it just seeing their interactions, their sort of they each end up sort of with this begrudging respect for each other, which especially in we're just calling him,
I mean, you do.
does he need to be called Archer?
Gilgamesh.
Yeah, especially in Gilgamesh's case, that is.
Yeah, wait, why would we not say that?
I don't know. I
This is spoilers.
just realized I was doing that partway through, and I didn't know if that's what we were doing. But yeah, especially in Gilgamesh's case, that's like you don't see him really respect anyone else ever like that.
Yeah.
So that's just
It's cool.
it's a whole other thing. And then that just like the what you called like the last charge of Iskandar was freaking powerful.
Dude,
man.
if you haven't seen this, go and Google live action Ionia Hetairoi. Like, it is the funniest, greatest thing with the voice actor of Iskandar, like, getting a crowd of people to shout out the, like, battle cry from the reality marble. It's so good. But, I mean, it's amazing in the anime, too. But obviously, that's the whole that's why it's cool. But, oh, I love it.
And that also, I think, brings us to another good point, which is that is the culmination of Waver's sort of character arc, which is a really great development to see throughout the whole series.
It's a pretty classic coming-of-age story, but it's told in a really nice way.
It's told with wizards, which, like, this is my fundamental storytelling philosophy, is that there is no reason to not include a fantastical element in a story. Like, maybe, it doesn't have to be to the degree of Fate, but, like, why not add dragons? Like, it'll only improve the story.
I've never heard this philosophy, but
I guess it depends on the kind of story you're trying to tell.
Why not add
because
it just makes no sense.
The real reason I would give you is that a lot of people cannot take fantasy seriously and thus will not engage with it. I know many people like that, so that's why.
Those people are bad.
I'm not gonna.
Those are low-ranking people.
But yeah, I mean, it's a really good coming of age story. Waver like really comes into his own, and you feel like he's really grown as a person from this mentorship with his own servant.
I'm excited to see more of him when we get the Waver
Lord
anime
Elmoroy 2 case files
in summer.
I mean, the preview episode was pretty good, so
it's gonna be great.
I'm just excited to see any fake content that's not in a Grail War. It's kind of cool.
That is true.
Funny enough, as we record this, JP has just a few days ago gotten their collab event for the Lord Elmoroy 2 case files anime.
Yeah, which isn't coming out for another few months, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know why they're doing it this early.
Seems a little off.
Maybe it's like a hype beast thing.
I guess
could be.
But...
Gray is a lancer, right?
Assassin.
Fucking buff lancers, please.
I mean, I mostly
she has
agree
a
that
scythe. She should be a lancer.
She should be.
Doesn't
she have
she's a
Rango
graveyard
Miniad?
keeper. I could see her as an assassin too. What?
Doesn't she have Rango Miniad
Yes,
or something?
she does.
Why is she not a lancer?
She should be a lancer.
That's
I
a
do
little
agree.
upsetting.
I think she should have been a lancer, but I think assassin is the next best. And Cole is now leaving. Cole has left the room. He is now out of sight. But yeah, no, it's
very upsetting.
So
but anyway,
I'll be excited to see that when we get it.
The event's coming
Gray
up.
seems like a cool character. I'm excited to learn
and
more
she's
about
free.
her.
She's
She's the welfare servant.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Zero though. So
Zero. Here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Kiritsugu.
Yeah.
Kiritsugu is the best boy.
Absolute best boy.
He is honestly
he tries so hard.
one of the best written
for those low-ranking Fate fans of you. Assassin Emiya.
Oh God.
Oh no.
Sorry, but yes. Kiritsugu Emiya is to date. I don't like making bold claims like this because I've never thought about it that much. But
Take command of this podcast. State your opinions and make them
all right.
definitive.
All right, Kiritsugu Emiya is my favorite protagonist in any show ever. He's the best. I love him. Like
Because he's a wizard.
He's a wizard, but
He's a wizard killer.
he's a wizard that is also a wizard killer, and he's a really well nuanced, interesting character with a really tragic history.
Yeah.
Would you liked him? Would you have liked him that much if it didn't involve magic, flowers, and vampires?
No, I would not have liked it if it had not involved magic and shit. Like, you're right, I guess, but like, I am me. And my mother is not me.
Exactly. The types of stories that we like, my mom calls anything that has an element that couldn't exist in real life, it's all science fiction. That's just...
Well, to be fair, my dad, who is into science fiction and stuff, calls everything science fiction. Everything, including fantasy and everything, is all science fiction. And I'm like, I guess you're kind of technically right by the original definition, but it's such a ridiculously unhelpful term if you use it like that. Anyway, my point was, Kiritsugu Emiya is like my favorite character because he has an incredibly tragic backstory that they go into in detail, and it forms this incredibly strong ethos.
They give him, 2-3 episodes?
Yeah, saw like a couple episodes randomly in the middle of like the second season. They're just like, well, we're gonna go deep dive into his backstory.
If you didn't know who was the main character yet, here you go.
Here's the main character, yeah.
Like, it was, I think, at an important point for them to do that, because it was, it wasn't in the middle of a plot point, it was like, you know, in between story beats, they're like, okay, you've seen how he reacts to everything, now we're going to show you how he gets that way. I think they could have done it in one episode.
Yeah, they might have taken too long to do it.
But it is good that they got it in there because it explained a lot more about him. It cemented him as the main character. Mm-hmm. And
which is important because a lot of characters had started to die at this point, and then it was like, all right, so now we focus on his journey for the rest of this show, like what happens with him. The rest of it up until then is a very much like, what the hell, who's who, what's going on? We're gonna find out piece by piece.
Because I think we get his backstory like right after he.
It's like right after he kills the Lord El Malloy, right?
Yeah, I think it's right after Lancer and his master die because of his
episode, by the way,
machinations, and it's like, okay, you know, that was a pretty, you know, that wasn't exactly a very good guy thing for him to do. So let's see why he makes those decisions that he does, and it gives you a bit more sympathy for why he's making these drastic decisions, because he's trying to save the world.
Right. So he has this really tragic backstory that they go into in detail, and you get it. His core philosophy is this idea that you have to sacrifice a few in order to save many, right? Mm-hmm. It's like this core idea that you have to be willing to make sacrifices, and he proves that throughout this short 2-episode arc through losing his first love as a child, and then eventually doesn't he kill his father as well?
He kills his dad. Kind of just out of rage, but also to save people so that this flower that he created doesn't get out.
Well, he was going to go around making more of the... What are they? Dead apostles?
Yeah,
he was going to go around making
It's hilarious. I didn't realize this until later, of course, because I wasn't that into the franchise yet, but I was like, dude, these are like literally like the vampires you fight in Tsukihime. What the heck? Yes, they are. That's hilarious. Anyway, I really don't know if there's any more significant like link than that, but it's really interesting. So, you go through all this. He kills his father, and then he has to go through this whole arc where he has a new mentor, and then he has to sacrifice her as well in order to further the ideals of saving the majority. And so you see this guy is dead set focused on this idea. So then it explains a lot of the actions he's taken in the anime up to this point, where he's, an assassin, he kills people, but he thinks it's for the greater good overall.
Because if he's gonna get this Holy Grail to save the world, he has to kill the other masters to get there.
Yes, and he is single-mindedly determined to do this at the cost of all else. Honor, justice, anything like that. Everything is in the pursuit of his ideal.
Because he wants to be able to save everyone, and the only thing that can do that is a miracle from the Grail. And then it turns out that
the Grail is the worst fucking, online, you want a free iPad bullshit of all time.
It's the biggest monkey's paw. So he gets the Grail, and it literally, and it has the best, in my opinion, again, best, explanation of the Grail. It has the best, it has the best way of showing you what happens when someone gets the Grail. Because most of the time, the Grail, something happens to it, or, even when someone gets it, something weird happens. There's always some weirdness. This time, he got the Grail, and he made a wish. His wish was to save everyone in the world and have, no more warfare, no more people die for no reason, right? Mm-hmm. And the Grail's like, my dude, you can't wish for something that you can't even imagine in your own mind. And that was the key problem. He can't imagine a world where people die
because that's what he lived in for the last 30-something years.
That's his reality. So when he realized that, he's like, fuck this, I don't want the Grail anymore. And
because the Grail was going to use his method of killing the few to save the many until there was basically no one left to even save.
And maybe not. What it might have done was maybe a sort of Death Note-esque thing where it goes through and kills indiscriminately, discriminately, I guess, everyone that it decides is a certain tolerance of evil or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not really explained in detail, but he's like, I'm not going to kill a bunch of people. That's the whole point of the Grail. I don't want to kill people. So he has Saber destroy it. And that screws everything up, as we know. And it ends up kind of doing what he hated anyway, by killing a relatively small number of people to save more. And it's so ironic.
Is he alive in Stay Night? I forget.
No, he dies, I think, about 5 years. Mm-hmm. So halfway between Zero and Stay Night, he dies supposedly. So if you just watch the anime, you'll probably be a lot happier than trying to figure out all of the meta explanations for what Nasu has planned for all of this, because Nasu's explanation for all of this is that the Grail was corrupted in the Third Grail War, which is why it doesn't work for Kuritsugu in the Fourth. And the thing inside the Grail curses Kuritsugu while he's there, and that's what kills him 5 years later.
Or he could just died.
Yeah, that's too complicated.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's way more complicated than it needs to be.
You don't need all of that.
Yeah, the Grail is always spiteful and shitty. It doesn't need that additional layer. But okay, I guess sure. Anyway, whatever. This is why you don't dig too deep into anything Nasu does. You're always you just kind of accept it for a good. You
usually regret it.
You accept it as a good story, and then you go, all right, I'm good with that for a while. So
just kind of smile and nod while he explains how it works.
And let me say one last thing about Kiritsugu. It's that he has this whole very specific arc, but then what really makes me think he's a truly brilliant character is not all that, but the fact that he also has a completely different aspect to his character shown with his wife, not wife. And his daughter. Yeah, well, whatever. And it's such a crazy dichotomy to see that in the same show where he does all this other stuff. You know
I think Saber even comments on that.
One thing that's
completely different.
Yeah.
That's
true. He's completely different on Iris Veal and Ilias Veal.
Yeah, and Iris Veal's trying to sort of explain it. It's in the second episode, I think.
Right.
One thing that really kicked me in the nads watching it the first time, I remember thinking, what's his assistant's name? Mia?
Maya.
I was like, I wonder if they're having an affair, and then they literally kissed as I was thinking that. And,
I remember...
I don't know if I can blame him, because he knows his wife is going to die in a few months.
Yeah, that's a weird relationship, honestly.
Because that is literally the only indication. Like, is he even having an affair? Because that's the one thing that is there, and then, like, there's nothing before or afterwards that really indicates that he's...
Like, I don't know if they don't seem like emotional people, really.
No.
I don't feel like they'd be the type of people to have a relationship like he and Irie did.
Right.
No. Yeah, I genuinely don't really know that much.
That
don't
was
go into a lot
honestly
of
the
detail
one
in show.
part of the entire series that I was really like, I don't understand this, and it bothers me. There were a lot of parts that I didn't understand, but it didn't bother me.
It does not bother me because I take it as a, like, probably, like, I can't even explain. There's too many possibilities. Like, it could just be, like, a kind of, like, long-standing working relationship where they, like, slowly grew feelings for each other or something like that. Or it could be just, like, they're just, like, using it as like an outlet for lust when they're out in the field.
I think that would be a better chance for it. I don't, like I said, I don't think these are two people who would form like a loving, healthy relationship. They're both trained killers. They're not exactly cuddly type.
It could even be that there's nothing going on and she was just trying to snap him out of his... Because he was kind of in his own head before that, and she was like trying to refocus him or whatever.
Yeah, it's weird
It's
moment,
impossible to tell because it's just like there and then it's not.
Yeah.
Speaking
it's
of
just weird.
Speaking of weird moments, this has the worst first episode of any Fate anime.
I can see why you say that.
Nothing happens.
Right.
Nothing happens in the episode except for circle walking.
I would say,
You're not
though...
wrong. I don't know if I... See, like...
I wouldn't say the worst of any because, Last Encore exists.
I disagree. Last Encore's first episode is rather action-packed.
It's action-packed, but you don't understand what's going on at any point.
When do you ever
Also
understand
true.
what's going on
So,
in Fate
like,
anime?
it depends what you want. It's tricky because, like, Last Encore is... stuff happens, and you don't understand it, and you don't really understand it until the end of the show, and even then it's still confusing. Mm-hmm. Zero, on the other hand, has a double-length episode where all they do is explain things to you.
Yeah.
All they do is slowly explain every facet of the Grail War, who all of the major players are, well, at least most of them, who all the major players are, and their motivations in them, and it's honestly a very good setup, but, like, it's a lot. It's 48 minutes of basically nothing, and honestly, in my estimation, usually when I'm watching an anime, if I'm not in by the end of the first episode, much less a double-length episode, I'm not going to continue watching it. So, like, this show definitely suffers from that. Every time I've recommended it, I've always had to say, just try to get to the second episode, because then you'll be way more into it.
Yeah, I feel like with Fate kind of has this problem of the first few bits being exposition dumps, which is why I think in almost every anime after, they also have a fight in the first episode.
Right.
Or something.
They've definitely done it better. Like, Unlimited Blade Works has a great opening.
Yeah, the first episode of that one is awesome.
The first couple, because the first episode is great, and then it kind of, like, you know...
They retell, like,
for the beginning, yeah.
Exactly.
They retell the beginning, which is so cool.
That's actually how they do it in the visual novel too. Because it starts out, the first little bit is Rain's perspective up until that same point, and then they go back and retell it past.
It's cool. It's cool as heck, and I loved how it worked. And it was a much more engaging couple first episodes. Heaven's Feel, again, tiny minor spoilers for the beginning. Just like breezes through that. They have like a few of the opening scenes, and then they have a literal montage of like most of the events that you see in every single Fate Stay Night route.
Yeah.
Just like going over them in a really cool, really well done montage that kind of give you a feel of, here's everything that happens.
I remember all three of us were so excited in the theater because we were like, we don't have to watch this again.
Yeah, because as much as we love it, it's like we've seen it multiple times.
We know how this works, especially in this universe.
Right, so we're like, this movie's only like 2 hours long. We don't want the first 40 minutes of it to be the same thing again.
So the point of this being that in Zero's first episode is a bit of an exposition dump. They do introduce a fair number of the characters, but
Basically everyone, I think.
yeah, I think
Everyone's here.
Most of the servants don't show up, and I think Ryunosuke is the only major character that isn't in the first episode. But,
So, yeah, that's true. It does have a rather slow first episode, for sure. A really slow one. And it's double length, which just makes it more painful. But, I don't know, whatever. I kind of ignore that fact because I don't have to think about the first episode that much.
I do want to... I think we should take a little bit to go over maybe specific characters, and then we're starting to run a little low on time.
Yeah, I agree.
But I want to say I think that this is the best Artoria story in all of
I would agree.
all of the everything else.
Everything, yeah.
Because
Artoria!
you get to see she has an entire arc. It's not like in Stay Night where she's just kind of there and it's more about her relationship with Shiro.
Or just nothing.
Or just, yeah, she's just there. This is about, there is a good chunk of the story that is just about her and her, sort of philosophy and, coming to terms with it being challenged and, having to react to that. There is a lot of really good, there are a lot of good, moments for her character in this, and I loved the character in Zero. When I moved on to Stay Night, I was kind of disappointed because it felt like a different character.
I don't think it's a different character.
It's not, but it just felt like
when you're honestly this iteration of Artoria is the only really fully fleshed out one. Like,
yeah.
All the other ones are just like, hey, she's there, but that's not his main character. It's not main character, and honestly, she doesn't have a lot of quirks. So like, you have to spend a lot of time to get to know her as a character in order to actually get anything out of the character. I feel like. Anyway, I agree. It's a good story for her. Her scenes with Iris Veal are some of the best things in the whole anime. Just derping around the city with her. Oh, it's so good.
Very wholesome.
Yeah. I would like to also highlight Karya. He is a immensely tragic character that it just is horrendously painful to watch
Greek
at times.
tragedy levels.
It's
his whole thing is he just wants to help his
niece
person that he likes.
They called him Uncle Karya, but they were not actually related.
Correct.
It was just because he was really good.
I think that's
friends
what
with their
fucked me
mom.
up.
Yeah.
Before I understood how Japanese vernacular worked.
Yeah. So he wanted to help his niece, and specifically, and because through an extension of that, the woman that he loved, and through this, he ended up taking in this power that he couldn't control, and it ended up devouring him, and he ended up horribly maiming the person he loved most in the world, and without really ever accomplishing anything. Like, it was miserable to watch. Mm-hmm. But in a good way, like, it was a really, like, classically terrible tragedy, which is, it's moving, you know? It's not, it's hard to even explain just how horrible he has it, but...
And it was interesting, it's interesting looking at some of these masters in juxtaposition with their servants, because having Lancelot, who was another, he was a hero who tried to do a lot of good, and then had a fatal flaw that just ended up destroying everything he loved.
Kind of almost in reverse of Karya, like, Lancelot's fatal flaw was everything kind of went to his head, and then he fucked up because of that. And Karya was like, he's trying to sacrifice for other people, and that got to him.
You're right. That's interesting. It's actually kind of cool how that mirrors Kiritsugu and Sabers, where they have like almost opposite philosophies in regards to how to save people. You know, like Sabers, Artoria is like, I have to be perfect to save everyone, and Emiya's like, you can't be perfect, so I'm gonna save what I can. You know, and they clash so much throughout the series, and it's one of the main highlights. At times they stop even like working together to some extent because they hate each other so much.
Yeah.
Well, Artoria hates him, but you know. wow, yeah, it's miserable. I literally was thinking about this as I was thinking about Kari. I was like, oh yeah, Tosaka, the father, is in this anime is one of the main characters. I don't even remember him that much because he doesn't feel like he's that impactful. The main thing I think he contributed was the cool relationship between him, oh my god,
Kirei?
Thank you, Kirei, the priest, and Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Their like weird power triangle thing, like
playing against each other,
was so good. It was such an interesting little story that told about this crazy lunatic Kirei and how he developed this insane, like, weird worldview that I still can't even really understand, to be honest.
How Gilgamesh drank all of Tosaka's wine. All of it.
So much wine, dude. Well, it's all his to begin with.
And played chess really badly against himself somehow.
Yeah. Dude.
I mean, after all that wine.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Any specific characters you want to touch on?
Mine was gonna be Kiria.
Yeah.
So,
I would like to briefly mention Lancer, Deermood.
Yeah.
Because he's just a really cool character who's like, he has a couple of cool moments. You know, he's just another character who, in the similar theme of all this, he's just trying to do good. He's trying to be honorable, and while there was no fault of his own, it was everything sort of fell apart and ended up destroyed.
there needs to be more bromances in Fate.
Honestly, Artoria and Yarma had a great bromance.
Yeah.
And it was such a great, like, series of fights they had. And the fact that Kirisuke ruined it so horribly was one of my favorite points in the show. Because it's so awful, but it's such a defining character moment for all characters involved. It was so good.
Oh no, I rate it 9 grails out of 10.
Like I said, it's probably my favorite anime to date. Though it's you know, like, I can't really compare apples to oranges. Like, I refuse to compare like a show like this against like Konosuba or
a strict comedy.
Right. Comedy shows that are just like pure comedy versus this action adventure storytelling.
It's hard to compare them.
They're so different that I love them for completely different reasons, so I have a hard time choosing them. But in terms of like overall favorite, yeah, maybe.
This is the show that made me really love Fate. So that's
This is
I
all
really
of our
like
favorite show in the series. First show in the series.
all of our first experience to Fate.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're a little biased, but in a good way. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that retrospective. Now we're going to go to our ending segment, the best servant you're not using, featuring this week Cole.
Yes. So if you watch as many gimmicky,
Right. Okay.
if technical difficulties, if you watch as many gimmicky challenge. One servant challenge videos as I do, you probably know this character, but for those of you who don't, St. George is in the game. Yeah, the one who killed the dragon. So he's an interesting character. If MASH wasn't in the game, he would probably be the best value tank.
When you say value, you mean 3-star or lower?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean 3-star or lower. So you probably have him.
Yeah.
He is a 2-star. He's a rider. He is arts based. He has a 2 quick, 2 arts deck. So he's going to be firing off his Noble Phantasm more often than
What's
not.
the 5th card?
His extra attack card.
Oh, you got me.
He has no buster.
No.
Yes. His first skill is Guardian Knight A, which gives him target focus and increases his own defense at max rank by 40%. So he's going to draw all aggro to him and tank it pretty well. He is basically Mash's skill. He can't go full invulnerable like Mash can, but
he does it all in one skill.
he does it all in one skill.
Not bad.
Saving room for his second skill, Martyr's Soul B, which heals him a little bit at max rank 2000 on a 5-turn cooldown isn't that bad.
No.
And then also at max rank gives him mental debuff resist 100%. So that's charm, terror, stun is a mental debuff? What?
I guess so.
No, terror. That's terror. It just has the same icon.
Oh,
Okay.
that's because terror causes stun, and it's only caused by like 2 abilities.
Yeah. But, yeah. Useful in certain scenarios.
Sure.
And then for his last ability, he has battle continuation, which
It does the guts.
it gives him guts at 2500 on max rank.
Yeah.
So, usually, how I've seen him used is you slap something like Battle of Camlane or Pieta, some CE that gives him an effect when he dies,
Interesting.
and then you draw aggro to him. He dies, gives your main servant NP or something, and then they go off.
Wow,
on their
this
thing.
is a different world. This is one of the last value servants I ever got, and I never used it. I've never touched him once. I have no idea what he does.
He
so
takes
this is
he takes a
interesting.
bit of work, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is how I started using him. As far as I know, he is the only arts single target rider right now. There are not many arts riders. Like almost all riders are Buster. If I can't think of any.
There's
I know a
there's
lot of
def-
quick riders.
There's definitely quick riders, but
I know of a couple of Buster.
does he have an
riders.
arts
I don't-
noble phantasm?
He does.
Okay.
He has Ascalon, which has one of the It deals damage. It's a damaged noble phantasm that
Single target. You said.
single target. Overcharge decreases defense pretty. No, it increases his own defense for one turn.
Oh,
So that makes
weird,
him
but
makes
sure.
him even more tanky.
Yeah.
And then it has one of the goofiest secondary effects. It applies the dragon trait to the target.
Oh, that's
Power to dragon!
That's so goofy.
So if you have someone like Sumanai, Siegfried, who deals extra damage to
Yeah.
dragon, or you have some weird anti-dragon team, I don't know how you would build that exactly. He can
With him, apparently.
With those
can-
3 characters.
he can draw aggro to himself, tank up a noble phantasm, pop it out. You then have Siegfried fire his NP out, deal the extra damage
Yeah,
to
I mean,
anything.
a Noble Phantasm chain of Ascalon into Sieg's Noble Phantasm is probably going to do a lot of damage. I believe the special damage bonus on Siegfried's Noble Phantasm and all of them always scale with overcharge,
Yeah.
basically. So dude, chaining that's probably really dumb, honestly.
Yeah, he is a very interesting character. There's not a lot of low star characters that are very tanky. The only other one I can think of is Leonidas, who kind of fills a different niche. We'll probably get to him eventually, though. Yeah, he is a
And of course,
interesting
Mash, who's maybe just the best tank in the whole game.
Probably the best tank in the whole game.
So good.
Far and above everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, legit, honestly, she's insane if you pair her with another really good, NP spamming servant. Anyway, but that's a different day, I suppose. We probably will never do it in best servant you're not using on Mash, because everyone's using Mash.
Everyone has Mash. If you're not using Mash, use Mash. She, especially after Camelot, she basically becomes near unkillable.
Especially after Camelot. She got so much better, yeah. So, very cool. What, I feel like there's something else. What's his, special CE?
Max Bond CE.
His max bond CE is, as I scroll down, it is called it's called What Can Be Left Behind. When he has it equipped, it grants the party invincibility.
That's hilarious.
For 1 attack, and reduces their damage taken by 1,000 for 3 turns when he dies.
Well, I guess that supports your theory.
Interesting.
So that actually seems like a great CE
And
for him then.
what's
yeah.
really why I awed at this is the art of this is a bunch of camcorder photos, which makes no fucking sense unless you play through his interlude, which I try to do with every one of my servants, in which he just finds this love for photography, which is the weirdest thing. But he finds this love that you can record. I think it's you can record life happening.
Yeah.
And that was just a really
That's
cool
cute.
thing.
That's nice, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That was a cool spotlight. Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea about this character, honestly.
George is cool.
I mean, I remember when
Georgios.
I made some, dumb posts about, I'm like, haha, I beat the whole story within, like, a month and a half, up to, Solomon, Ask Me Anything. And everyone's like, hey, did you use a lot of George? And I'm like, what? Who's that? So, yeah. No, he seems good, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, definitely there's a lot of pretty cool low-star servants. And honestly, I prefer low-star servants that don't focus on damage because they're just going to be outclassed damage-wise by their high-tier equivalents every time. If they have high utility or good tanking, they're often more effective, I find. So.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're going to, in general, have more 3-star and lower servants in this end card sequence because that's just the lesser used in general.
Yeah. I may
characters.
do one about, like,
I have 1 or 2 4-stars in mind, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, probably not 5-star. The best servant you're not using is Merlin because you didn't roll him, you asshole.
Wow, just gonna flex on everyone like that, are we?
But actually, that's not even true because everyone's using him on support, so it doesn't matter.
All right.
I think that's about it for us today.
All right.
So
take us out, Cole.
thank you guys once again for listening. We will be back shortly with a continuation of our retrospective of the Fate franchise. And from now on, good night, Chaldea.
See ya.
Yeah.